watching the Forefront Church video podcast. And wherever you're at viewing online, we just want to say thank you and welcome. And one of the ways that we can help connect with you is we want to hear from you and where you're at and how we can help. And so head over to forefrontchurch.info after the message and click the Connect tab. It's a great way for us to help you along your spiritual journey as you connect with God and learn about Jesus. And so sit back, relax. We hope that you're challenged and encouraged from today's message. In the finale of this series, How to Survive a Shipwreck, and we're going to jump right in. And so if you have a Bible, turn over to Hebrews chapter 12 is where we're going to be at today. If you don't have a Bible, you could stop by, and we say this every week, the Get Connected table in the lobby, grab a brand new Bible. There's no catch. You don't have to fill anything out. Grab that new Bible. That's there for you to write in, highlight, fill out, whatever. Or you can go to forefrontchurch.info and click the Notes and Bible tab. Everything that we're talking about this morning is right there for you. You can fill those out, take notes, email those notes back to yourself, and so you'll have a copy of those you track on, especially if you get easily distracted. You're a lot like me. Use those notes there. And so turn over to Hebrews chapter 12. While you're turning over there, a couple things. First off, since this is the finale of our series, we start a brand new series next week, and it's called Spare Me. It's a teaching series. It's a little play on words. A teaching series on generosity. And we do a teaching series on generosity, and you might think, all right, here they go. There's where they talk about money. I know they don't talk about it during offering, but they're going to talk about it for weeks. Great. This is much more a series about what does it mean to have a heart for other people. Where's your heart? Jesus teaches about the fact that where our time, our energy, our talents, our treasure is, so our heart is also. And so there's a big kind of tell when we see what do we invest in, not only in our resources, but also in our time. And so we're going to take 4 weeks to look at cultivating a heart of generosity in, let's be honest, a culture that really wants to hoard and keep everything for ourselves, to build up our own kind of little empire and kingdom. And what does it look like to pour into other people's lives? And so we're starting that next week. And speaking of next week, I've heard there's a sporting event thing going on. I wouldn't know because my Giants are going to be watching from home. Woohoo! New York Football Giants 2019. Anyways, really, really excited for that. And so there is no 5 p.m. service next week or Collide. We want you guys to hang out and watch the Pats win. And so enjoy that. Little angry at Philly. But anyways, so on that note, why don't we pray together as we jump into things today? God, I thank you for today, this church, us together, celebrating, laughing, worshiping. God, you are so good. And there are days where I think we miss that. And maybe I miss it sometimes. Because like Tanya said, I let my circumstances impact how I view you. And God, I just want to say today, maybe on behalf of all of us, we're sorry that we do that. And God, today as we look at that very situation, the shipwrecks that happen, will you help us to be receptive, even in the middle of our mess and that storm that's brewing, to learn and focus on you. God, we love you. We thank you that even when we get it wrong, you still love us. That's a beautiful thing. And it's in your Son, Jesus' name, we pray this morning. Amen. So as we wrap up this series today, I put a little call out to the social media world, and I just want to put it out there, they did not disappoint. 160 plus comments later on Facebook and 73 direct messages on Instagram, people are really awful at giving gifts. I asked this question and posed this online. A little message help. What is the worst gift you ever received? Some people private messaged me because they're friends with people on social media and didn't want others to know that they gave horrible gifts. By the way, number one person that gives horrible gifts, parents. And it's usually as you get older, the gifts get worse. And so I would challenge you to be a little more in tune as you're giving gifts. Now, and I know what happens. People will then say, Jason, it's really the thought that counts. Here's the problem. You need to think a little more about what you're giving because people are wounded on this string of, go back, if you go to Facebook especially, just go read through that. One person commented last night, I saw it this morning, I never want this string to end. It's so good, of comments and things. Here are some of them. Some of the people are in this room that talked about it. A dictionary, bad bed sheets, not the good thread count. A candelabra made of PVC pipe, Brute cologne. This one was good. Not one, but 2 world's okayest dad coffee mugs. Nope, it gets better. The first one was funny. Then I opened the second one a couple minutes later. It wasn't funny anymore. It goes on with stuff. And somebody in their first marriage, I wonder why it didn't go well, for their first anniversary, they got a fly fishing rod. The husband got the wife one, and she doesn't fly fish. I like this one, an open jar of pickles. Not closed. No, just we're going to open that sucker right on up. A jar of uncooked macaroni noodles. Dan Pollard got a sweater vest, and so if you know our Dan Pollard, he needs to wear that next time he preaches on stage. I was going through these, and I was just amazed. One of the biggest ones that people give is used crock pots. There were actually 8 people that messaged me that said someone gave them a used crock pot. It's never okay. Unless you say, hey, I got a crock pot that I don't really use anymore. Do you want it? It's never okay to wrap up a used crock pot and then hand it over. Somebody had a used Belgian waffle maker. Now, a lot of them were re-gifting from weddings and things. Somebody got a ruler and a roll of toilet paper. I'm going to stop there. This is awful. And so, gifts, I get it. I understand the woundedness. I mean, it was therapy session for people all day long yesterday between those 2 social media platforms. And in bad gifts, well, they don't stop. They were going to continue to happen. And there's one gentleman from Alberta, Canada, who actually got a pretty bad gift. Now, you look at this, you might be like, oh, I don't know. Like, a little older, he has this gift. I don't see what the big deal is. He's smiling. He doesn't seem too unhappy about the gift. I want to put this in perspective. In 1970, Adrian Pierce, who you see pictured here, was 17 years old. And during that time, he was a senior in high school. His girlfriend at that time had just handed him this little gift, all wrapped up and ready to go. Once she handed him the gift for Christmas and they were exchanging it, and he was looking at it, she opened up her gift, and after she opened up her gift, she let him know that they were breaking up. 17 years old, senior in high school. Hey, I'm going to open up your gift. By the way, we done. It doesn't end there. She gave me the present at the same time, and I took the present home after we broke up. I had a long walk home and was upset and angry at all the things what you feel when somebody breaks up with you. he recounted. And so, when I got home, I fired the present under the tree. After my family opened their gifts at Christmas, there was still this one gift left. And it's the gift the girl, and he names her by name in the interview, Vicky, had given me. Hashtag, come on, Vicky. I told my family I'm never going to open that present. This was 1970. He never did. Each year, Pierce continued placing the present under the tree, even after he got married and had children. Now, I'm going to pause this story for a second. All the men in the room groaned. It's because you smarter than good old Adrian Pierce. If you have a box of love notes that you've held on to, toss them. If you have pictures of old ex-girlfriends, shred her, okay? That's a lifetime that you can leave behind. If you have a wrapped gift that you keep putting under the tree and then you got married and have kids, if you're that wife, what's wrong with you? Like I do it. But it says, eventually, his wife put her foot down and said it wasn't welcome under the tree anymore. You would think that good old Adrian would go ahead and throw this gift away. Oh, no, no, no. No, friends. Now he just pulls out the old gift, which is wrapped in shiny blue paper. It don't look too shiny after a while. That's now fading. He looks at it before putting it away again. What's wrong with Adrian? Yeah, stubborn is right. Dumb, yeah, I would say. You know, I think, unfortunately, many of us are like Adrian. That we have been given an amazing gift. Now, he doesn't even know what's inside it. He still has not opened it over 40 years later. Bonkers. It committed, but bonkers. But for many of us, we have been handed the most beautiful gift ever of the hope of eternity and life with Jesus. And for many of us, we've let a storm derail us and throw that gift back underneath the tree and never, ever open what God has in store for us. Now, you may be saying right now, Jason, that's not me. You know, I've walked down this road. I've been going to church for a month, a year, years. You know, we're not about like, numbers or anything else. This church we would have to continue to do services all week long if every single person unwrapped the gift that God has given them and shared that gift with other people. We would not be able to do enough services here for the number of people that would encounter His love, His grace, and His mercy. And I believe firmly that most believers, just from statistically shown, because most believers don't even open up their Bible but one time a month, that most believers have let a shipwreck moment, a storm happen that has derailed them from the gift that God has given them for them to thrive and have hope and have the most beautiful life that God has intended for you. And God has that not only in this life, but in eternity. And what we push back with God in the midst of that giving of that gift is we go, God, I hear you about eternity. I want my ticket to heaven, but what about right now? Because I feel in angst. I feel dislodged and hurt and bitter about what's happening now. God, fix right now. And what we talked about last week is that Jesus wants to calm the storm inside of your life before He ever wants to deal with the storms around you. And that's difficult for us to hear, but it's true. And if you ask the question, if you didn't hear last week's message, you can go back and listen to it and watch it on our website and podcast and all that. If you're sitting in this moment and going, God, why aren't you calming this? I can guarantee you it's because God is focused on what's happening inside your life, and we are focusing on the outside circumstance. God goes, no, I got more in store for you. But let's turn our attention not to pointing fingers to the outside, but picking up a mirror and looking at the core, the inner man, inner woman. And what happens in this when we ask, God, what about right now? That's a valid question, but it's because we've had improper perspective, because we're focused on throwing the gift away and we're focusing again on the storm, on the shipwreck. And the reality is, our home is in heaven. Our home is in a perfect place with no more tears, no more hurt, no more pain, no more disease, no more ugliness, no more politics. Our home is in heaven, but in the meantime, here, there is often trouble. There's often moments of shipwreck and hurt. And so how do we draw our attention to what is true? How do we, unlike Adrian, how do we go and really engage the gift that God has given you and I and begin to unwrap that and dive into the promise that God has for us? Because that's a beautiful thing. And I've shared with you that every single week, these are things that I'm learning. I can say with definitiveness that this truth today is something that I have learned and I have embraced. Because it's the only thing that gets me through each and every day. And there's a passage that you've been holding in over in Hebrews chapter 12, where the writer shares how to change perspective. This is fixing our eyes on Jesus in verse 2, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand at the throne of God. You see, the chapter before this talks about the faith that we must hold dearly to. It talks about the way that we survive and the troubles that we will happen, but here are the men, here are the women that have gone before us, that have championed for us, that are absolutely amazing, that have held tight to their faith, and then it kind of turns the tide and says, well, what about us? How do we grab a hold of and live a life like they have lived? And so the writer, Paul, kind of turns the focus back to us and say, how do we walk in their same footsteps and in the footsteps of Jesus? And while we would say that, and if you don't get anything else, my hope and prayer is that you get this. If you want to focus on those things, we must learn to fix our eyes on Jesus and our heart and mind on eternity. I don't see very many people that focus on Jesus anymore. They focus on their problem, focus on the marriage, whether it's good or bad. They focus on their kids and whether or not they're going to be the next greatest ball player or sports athlete. They focus on their job and how well it's going or how awful it is, their commute to and from work, and all this stuff. And we have a can I just get to tomorrow perspective. Can I just get home and kick my feet up and just relax because it's been a tough day? When we fix our eyes on Jesus, it changes our perspective. It changes the way that we view the world, that we don't wake up to a new day of the same old thing. We wake up in the morning to a new day that has been promised to be filled with joy and beauty and love and grace and redemption and being able to share with other people that I have life because I have decided, in light of the sacrifice that Jesus already did, his work, that I have decided that I want to walk with him, and it changes your perspective. It changes the way that you view the world. And there's a few things that kind of wrap up in this, and the first one is this, that as we learn to walk with Jesus, in our shipwrecks, we will begin to have unexplainable peace in the middle of that here, and unfathomable rewards in glory in heaven when we pass on from this world. You know, I can talk about this firsthand because you may say, Jason, what life experience do you have? And it's been interesting. And there's one in particular that happened right here as a church. When I first took on this role, I found out, and I've explained it, and here's a Cliff Notes version. The church had multiple campuses. The church was over $180,000 in debt. All of the staff members had to write their checks back to the church because the church had no money. Like, that's where I was kind of like, hey, here, you want to be the lead pastor? Here you go. I was like, whoo. And I was young and terrified. And I remember going back to my house and talking to my wife. And she's like, you don't seem super scared. And I was like, well, she's like, well, what if it completely goes away? I was like, well, God, God called me to be faithful. God didn't call me to win. And even if this fails, if I'm faithful, it's okay. And so like we had this huge meeting. We shut down all our small groups for the week, had this huge meeting in our warehouse space. Everybody gave all kinds of ideas and whatever. And I remember, and it was not my words. I didn't even plan it. I said, this is God's church, and God put you as a part of this church. And you can give and it can thrive, or you don't give, and I'll go work at Home Depot, and I will totally still love Jesus. That night, they collected up enough money to pay the entire staff within 5 cents. They ended up sending our staff to a conference where we could get refreshed. And God changed the game through his people. You know what? I have peace about what God does. I never worry about what God's going to do because God's always had my back. Even in the moments where it seemed like it was bleak and in the middle of a shipwreck, I just go, God, you're just using this to see how strong I am. And the only reason that I'm strong is because of you. And so I'm going to have unexplainable peace in the middle of this because you are just that good. You are just that big of a God. And so I'm going to sit in this going like, all right, God, you've got this. And I know that if I can sit and be faithful to your strength and your beauty, that I'm going to experience reward past this life that is so beautiful. I love the way that the writer puts it in 2 Corinthians, Paul, who we've been kind of revisiting, and he shares it this way. Though outwardly, therefore we do not lose heart, though outwardly we are wasting away. I feel that every day as I get older. Yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is what? Seen, but what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. You see, in shipwrecks, God's peace will become the most beautiful power that you will ever harness. The peace that he brings you will give you power unlike any other. And I would just ask the question, where are you drawing your peace from? How are you fostering that in your life? I wrote this down. I was watching this message actually last night from Rick Warren, his wife Kay Warren, and Beth Moore. Like they were just blowing the roof off of stuff. They were talking about just the scandals that have ravaged not only media, but even churches about just the sexual abuse and things that go on. And one of the things that Rick Warren pointed out, and I had preached on it before, but it just kind of hit me. He said that when we get this peace in our lives, it comes from God, but it comes from, he fosters it through human interaction. That when we have a peace through God, it happens together. And he notes that there's 58 different phrases, different versions of one another statements that Jesus teaches. That you should love one another, that you should care for one another, that you should encourage one another. There's all these different ways about one another, 58 different one another statements that Jesus makes. And while I love the fact that we're able to put stuff online, that we're able to watch podcasts and supplement with worship music and Christian books and all these things, when you talk about fostering peace, the number one way that happens is trusting God, and God uses people to do that, and that happens here, that happens together, and you can say, I don't need this, you are wrong. And that's not my words, that's God's. Because God fosters that peace through him, and he extends that through other people. You can point back to an instance where God used person X, person Y, and Z to enter into your life to change you and bring you peace. And when you trust his peace, it leads to unfathomable reward from this life to the next. But also, as we learn to think biblically, our lives will increasingly reflect an eternal perspective. Now, I want to kind of dive into this a little bit, and so for you thinkers, this helps out a little bit. When you think, when you're processing these things, and I'm a very analytical, I'll sit at night and the wheels will turn. It's very difficult to sleep for me because I'm always thinking of other stuff, and I'm like, stop, turn it off. And that's me all the time, 24/7. I don't like it. I wish it would turn off, but God's like, yeah, there's more in there. I'm like, that. But if you're a thinker, those thoughts get fostered when you start also processing information. And so you start getting into the science of things like as we feed the information, then we process that, and then we are able to work through it and then come to a conclusion, etc. How we think relies heavily on information. So when we look at this, as we learn to think biblically, part of that, so we can get an eternal perspective, how are you feeding your life biblically to think in such a way that you're looking towards heaven and not towards the hell that's going on in your life? How are you feeding your life in such a way through Bible study, through prayer, through small groups, through engaging this on a weekly, consistent basis? Not just for you, but if you're a parent, for your kids. And not just coming to any given service, but coming to a specific service. Why? So they can see the same people over and over, so they can pour into their lives. How are you feeding your life to think biblically and not look at the hell that's happened in your life, but towards heaven to an eternal perspective? You see, there are plenty of people who are vying for your time. Your number one commodity is not your finances. It's time. Every single one of us has the same 24 hours in a day. Some of us spend much more time sleeping than others. Some of us will be #on that grind a little bit more than others. Some of us take our time, 5 p.m. after dark service. But for many of us, that commodity, we've realized it, and it's huge. And there's also other people that are vying for that so that you can think not biblically, but so that you can think about what they want you to think about. There's a former Facebook, he's the former Facebook vice president of user engagement, and I'm not even going to attempt his last name. Chama P is what we're going to call him. It was the longest standing Facebook employee other than Mark Zuckerberg until just a couple months ago. And when you want to talk about what is happening through social media and how you feed yourself, well, I love social media, but be careful. Look, the tremendous guilt that I feel daily is greater than I can put into words. This is an interview with Vanity Fair. I think we have created tools that are ripping apart the social fabric of how society works. At Facebook, we knew exactly what we were doing. Okay? I love social media, but I want you to hear this. But listen, I'm not picking on, and he says it, the practice is not isolated to those offices, but all media, not just social media, all media. They are preying on your time, mind, and identity. The short-term, dopamine-driven feedback loops we've created are destroying how individuals live and see themselves. When you get a like, it sends off the same reaction as when you have intimacy. When you get a notification, it sends off the same reactors in the brain as when you get a gift from a loved one. They know exactly what they are doing. And they do it not just through the news, they do this all the way. It's fascinating, but it's also scary. This is what he says, being on the backside of this, knowing all this, we must change how we become informed so we can keep proper perspective in life and in human interaction. You want to talk about, now I don't know where his faith is and all that stuff, but this last sentence, he could be up here. Because how we keep an eternal perspective is thinking biblically, and the only way that we do that is if we actually are feeding into our life that which points us towards heaven and not the hell that we deal with. The shipwrecks, the storms, these moments. And I love the way that Paul, the writer, as he's writing to the Philippian church, puts it this way. He shares, but our citizenship is in heaven, and we eagerly await a Savior from there, the Lord Jesus Christ, who, by the power that enables him to bring everything under his control, will transform these lowly bodies so that we will be like his glorious body. You see, in the shipwrecks, you will bear witness to what you truly believe about God, Jesus, and heaven. In those moments where life gets difficult, the inner man, the inner woman will come out, and it will show what you believe, how you've been thinking biblically or not about eternity will rise up very quickly as you walk through these moments. But one of the things that encourages me so much, and it's the last one, is this, that as we learn about the hope of heaven, just know it will be greater than anything we can imagine. Like every time I read about heaven and you get into like, oh, streets of gold and no more pain and no more suffering. And then there's some like weird dreams, and I don't know if it's like literal or figurative. This guy John had all kinds of dreams about what the future will hold, and there's weird animals and eyeballs and wings, and I don't know. It's just get in there, it's a little weird. But there is just, like they talk about mansions, I don't care. Give me like an outhouse in heaven. Like like I want to be there. I want to be with Jesus. All that stuff. I don't care what I get. But what we see, that gift will be so much greater than the worst gift you've ever experienced. It will blow that out of the water. Completely amazing. And coming from somebody who's an awful gift giver, I'm so thankful that God doesn't give gifts like me. Because I dream about that, and I know it's going to be amazing. And like my wife and I, we like try to do things all the time. Like she, out of the gate, when we got married, surprised me. I thought we were going to a honeymoon just to like do our thing. Come to find out we were going on a cruise. She like behind the scenes like did everything and just surprised. She's like, actually, we're going on. I was like, whoa, that's awesome. And she has continued that being awesome gift giver like always. And I'm always striving to like up her one, and she always outshines me. I've given her all sorts of stuff. Like her laptop died and we lost all her wedding pictures, and I was like, here's a new laptop, here's all this stuff, here's a camera, I love you. And then she turned around and got me this, like I had dreamed about this sunburst Ibanez guitar. And I would go to Guitar Center and just play it because we did not have enough money. Well, little did I know, my wife's saving quarters and dimes and dollar bills and everything else. And so we get to our anniversary and I'm like showing up with like this like necklace that was like, no, what am I? And like she walks in with this big old thing. I'm like, oh crap, I know what that is. And shows up with his guitar. I'm like, thank you. Here's your. Like she's always outdone me. And so I've always tried to top it, but I'll never be able to top her greatest gift. Like this year, I gave her a KitchenAid mixer because she bakes and does all this stuff. She loves it, and gave her this gift. And I thought, man, this is going to be great. And then my daughter says, Daddy, that is a cool gift, but Mommy gave you the best gift. And I was like, what is that? She's like, she gave you us. And I'm like, thanks, kid. Like, and this is, guys, like this is serious. You will never be able to outgive. If your wife gives you life, you're done. Like there's nothing you can do. You can be like every year, birthdays, Valentine's, Christmas, anniversary, you name it. You're like, hey, I got you this. Be like, what'd you get me? Life. Like she can just do that. She doesn't have to ever get you a gift again. She'll be like, I gave you life. What'd you give me? A toaster. Like it's absolutely, but I know that no matter how bad, the gifts are and everything else, and I'm awful at it, I know that God gives good and perfect gifts. And that heaven is going to be one of those moments that when this worn and dreary earth gets renewed and earth and heaven collide in this, I don't even know what it's going to be like. I just know that I'm excited to see what takes place. That heaven will be greater than you and I could ever imagine. I love the way the writer in Ecclesiastes puts it best. He has made everything beautiful in his time. He has also set eternity, and I love this, in the human heart. There's a reason that you long for something different than Netflix and football games. That you, even past the Pinteresting and going out to eat and job and stuff, that God built you and I for more than this, that he put that sense of eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from the beginning to the end. It is going to be so good. But we don't have to wait until then. You see, we are informing ourselves through the way that we live, through the way that we study, through the community that we gather in, through being a part of a church and connecting with God. And we have a choice about where we will look, about where we will focus. And my hope and prayer is that we will take a step back and get to this place. We must learn to fix our eyes on Jesus. Our heart and mind on eternity. And I can't promise you much. I know you're going to have hardship. I know you're going to have shipwrecks. And over the last 4 weeks, we've talked a lot about that. I've heard a lot of stories that have broken my heart and encouraged me. But the one thing that I know is true, it was when you focus on Jesus, when you envelop your life around Jesus, even in the middle of your plight and your mess, you can stand firm. And that isn't just getting a dose of Jesus when you quote unquote need him. It's staying consistent in your faith and engagement with God. Not only fixing your eyes on him, but beginning to set your perspective, your heart, and your mind on eternity. You want to survive a shipwreck? It's Jesus. It's always been Jesus. It's never changed. And that for you can start today. But that choice is yours. Would you pray with me? Thanks for tuning in to the Forefront Church video podcast. Our hope and prayer is that this has left you encouraged and challenged you in your faith. And you might have some questions and some ways that you want to figure this out, and we want to help with that. Head over to forefrontchurch.info, and there's a couple different ways that you can connect. Click the Connect tab and let us know how we can be praying for you, or a staff member can be contacting you this week. Maybe you have just been encouraged by this and want to support the ministry here at Forefront Church. You can click the Giving tab, as well as other tabs that are in there to help you along in your journey with God. And so we're thankful for you. Thanks for tuning in. And we cannot wait to see you again here online on the video podcast. We love you, and we'll see you then.